Dr. Evelyn Zellerer is a criminologist who has a passion for peacemaking circles and restorative action. Even though bringing together a criminal with his or her victim has never gained mainstream traction in Canada, Dr. Zellerer thinks restorative justice under the right circumstances works and saves lives. She says it is more than a socialist's dream. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Evelyn Zellerer to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Well, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
How do you define restorative justice? What is it?
Well, restorative justice is a different program. It's not a program. That's one of the things I want to make clear. It's a different framework from criminal justice in terms of responding to conflict and achieving justice. So in a nutshell, it's an invitation to everyone who has been affected by a crime to come together to find out, okay, what really happened, what was the impact, who was hurt, and importantly, what needs to happen to bring healing and make things right.
Okay, and are you talking about serious crimes like murder, sexual abuse, and not so serious crimes like getting caught with some pot in your car?
Well, it works for all kinds of crimes. So from the least serious all the way to the most serious, and it's been used successfully in all kinds of cases.
Where did it come from? I guess that's kind of a silly question, but the history of restorative justice, is it from Aboriginal circles?
Well, it has its roots in many, many cultures and traditions around the world globally. It certainly draws upon Aboriginal traditions and Aboriginal roots, absolutely. They've been doing forms of healing for thousands of years, so we certainly appreciate the teachings that are being passed on that we can utilize in our modern society. So it doesn't have one root, certainly in African tribes, for example, all over. The term restorative justice is a contemporary term, and so the practice was there before we named it. And the practice has always been ahead of our terminology, to be honest with you, of how we describe it.
So the key elements to restorative justice or restorative action, whether you are in a corporation or in a criminal situation, are the key elements that make it work the same? The steps?
Yes, there's a core foundation of values and principles, and then how it's actually implemented varies across jurisdictions and across particular cases. So core elements would include things like voluntary. People are invited to participate. This is incredibly crucial for victims. Victims are never required to participate. Inclusion, respect, it focuses on the harms and the needs of all the individuals involved. It's participatory, so we invite people to use their own voice to share what has been their experience and what do they need, because nobody can tell you what you need if you're a victim or an offender or a family member or a neighbor or just a community participant. So we need people to come from their own place to speak. So things like that is a common philosophy. And so we ask questions like, who was hurt? Whose obligations are these? What needs to be done to make things right?
And who facilitates it?
It's trained facilitators, so that's an important point. We need people who have an understanding of the philosophy and the values and are grounded in the principles of restorative justice. And the training takes various forms depending on the particular program or the particular approach, if it's, for example, mediation or a peacemaking circle.
So it could be mediation?
Yes.
Peacemaking circle, what happens in a peacemaking circle?
Well, in a circle, and I just want to say it's the most powerful process I have found in the world in terms of being able to effectively respond to any conflict or crime. It's incredibly powerful. So we physically sit in a circle. Everybody is, well, there's a preparation stage. Again, I can get into a lot of detail. I don't want to bore you, but we certainly meet with people beforehand. We make sure it's suitable to come to circle. We then invite people to come into circle, and one of the distinctions of a peacemaking circles is using a talking piece. You asked about the Aboriginal connection. That would be one of the tools and gifts from the Aboriginal culture, to pass around a talking piece so everybody has an opportunity to speak.
And I assume the goal is that everybody tells the truth? not afraid to tell the truth, tap deeply into their emotion. The human factor must be huge.
It's everything. You know, there's nothing outside of us, really. And so when somebody has experienced a conflict or a crime, it is an emotional experience. So one of the powerful attributes of restorative justice is the allowance of that emotion to be expressed. The court system is good for certain things. It's good for establishing legal guilt and legal innocence.
Right.
So it's a due process that we need in Canada. We need the courts. This isn't a replacement of that, but it's a different process. And we're incredibly good at, as you said, the emotional element, the human element. So one of the key things we strive for in restorative justice, and we do very well, is humanize everybody. We humanize the offender, we humanize the victim, and we allow people to express whatever is going on. And so the circle is a container that really can hold any emotion, whether it's extreme pain or phenomenal anger. That's okay. We need to express that.
Is the long-term goal forgiveness, understanding, peace?
All of the above. I think the first step is understanding, because we want to know what happened. We want to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, so to speak. So the offender has to share what happened from their perspective. Why did they do this? The victim needs to share the impact that it's had on them in their lives and the ripple effect out to their families and their communities. So it's understanding for sure. We want to learn from this. Obviously, everybody makes mistakes. The key is, can we learn from this? And we don't want this to happen again. So we want to reduce the likelihood that this offense will occur again or criminal behavior will continue. Another goal is healing. And that's a distinction from the criminal justice system. The goal is determining legal guilt and punishment, deterrence. In the restorative system, it's about healing, and it's about understanding, and it's about moving forward in a good way. So it's very much a forward-looking approach. So as we move on, what's required?
You're not saying in any way if a psychopath murders 10 women, he should go to a healing circle.
No, it wouldn't be appropriate.
No.
It wouldn't be suitable. There's certain individuals that, the way I put it, have given up their right to live in our community. They're too dangerous. They require, being locked up and dealt with within a secure facility.
Okay, now you have a rape victim and a rapist. Charged, convicted, in jail, not in jail. How does bringing them together work? You say they have to both agree that she or he would need to meet the perpetrator.
Yes, it can be done either face-to-face, if that's appropriate and desirable, or it could be done through sort of a shuttle experience where it's from letters, for example. So 2 cases come to mind immediately. It has been done successfully with rape. In one case, the individual was in prison, and they wrote letters to one another. And so she said it was finally a time when she could heal from this and come to a place of forgiveness and move on. Another case where the victim was very, very traumatized. And after a certain number of years, she was able to connect with her rapist. And it was, again, a tremendous healing moment for her, where she could release some of the terror that she had been experiencing.
Katie Hutchison has been in this show, and I know you've met Katie Hutchison, and it was Katie McIntosh, and her husband, Bob, was killed in Squamish when he went to settle down a party at the neighbors, and he was killed by Ryan Aldridge, who is now on the road, if you like, but on the tour with Katie, who is the widow, and he is the young man who killed her husband. And the two of them have made peace and are trying to send a message, are sending a message about drinking and abuse of alcohol and all of that and more.
It's another example of the power of restorative justice. It's a good example, in this case, obviously a murder case, and there's other cases where murder has occurred, and you have experienced this yourself, and having both of them on the show, and I've seen both of them speak. What a powerful, powerful message to other people, again, about that learning and preventative aspect then, so they can speak from their own experiences and hopefully reach others to learn from what they've experienced.
Okay, so as you watch the conservative movement to get tough on crime, the Tory crime bill coming forth, do you see this as part of the bill in any way, or you see this working in any way, being addressed in any way at a government level?
I'm deeply, deeply concerned about this omnibus crime bill coming forward. It's a sweeping legislation involving multiple acts and a lot of changes that they're proposing. The best descriptive label for that bill is Get Tough. So that's how we can refer to it. And I think
means more people in jail, I'm
yes,
assuming.
Yes, exactly. So what
Fill
it
the
is,
jails with minor criminals and major criminals.
yes, because when you sweep like that, when you have mandatory minimum sentencing, and when you're targeting more people for longer time in jail, then you're going to sweep in a lot of nonviolent offenders. You're going to sweep in a lot of people with drug issues and drug addictions. We already have huge numbers with mental challenges, mental disabilities in prison. So it's very predictable what will happen, and it's really, really disheartening. I can't say this strongly enough. This is not the direction Canada needs to go. It is taking us down a path that will create huge costs, both socially and financially, for Canada. And we can just look to the US for what happens. And the US is in crisis right now. The Supreme Court just ordered California to release, I think it's more than 30,000 prisoners. The overcrowding is horrendous. It's been just decimating. And we have people, prominent people in the US telling Canada, please don't do this.
So if you have a citizen who is furious, a recent example, many citizens furious over a judge's decision, really. And I know we never know all the details, and we weren't in the court, and we did not read the judgment, but the bus driver who was beaten by the 3 teenagers, and one of the teenagers, I think, got some community service, and the others were not punished. Innocent victim, driving a bus, gets beat up. How do you work with that? You know, once it's been decided, I'm not sure if it will be appealed, I don't know what's going on, but in a restorative justice model.
Well, we have every right to be upset about these cases, and we should be upset because these individuals are not held accountable in a meaningful way, and the victims are not given the support they need for their healing. So it's a travesty. So yes, we have many cases that are not effectively dealt with the criminal justice system. The caution that I have is then to say, well, we need to get tough, and that's not necessarily the answer. And one of the issues is that we don't have an alternative in place. People aren't aware that there's another option. So restorative justice provides another option, another vehicle for that healing and that accountability. So it's about holding offenders accountable in a very meaningful way. It is not soft on crime.
And the punishment fits the crime in a sense. It would make sense to me. The kids have to clean buses or something, I don't know. But if you put the parents and the kids and the bus driver and maybe a supervisor or somebody on the bus in one of your circles,
that's exactly right.
something would come out of it.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to forgive, you can just make peace.
No, and forgiveness isn't the goal, it is an opportunity, and people misunderstand the forgiveness from a victim. They think, oh, the offender doesn't deserve it sometimes. Really, people have to get that the forgiveness is a gift for the victim themselves, and it releases them to live more powerfully and to move on with their lives. But forgiveness isn't a one-time event, it's a process, and people go through their own process in their own time, in their own way, and we need to support victims
and metaphysically,
to do that.
as you know so well, you have to let it go.
Absolutely.
Or it hangs on you forever, and it will change your life. It just hangs with you forever. So if there is a way to put whatever horrendous thing happened to you behind you,
yes, and that's what we want
a way
to
to
do.
move forward.
Absolutely, and the sentencing, you know, the agreements that we come to in a circle, another powerful aspect of restorative justice is we have tremendous creativity on what the agreements would be. What are the results?
Where to go next?
Where to go next? Because in a criminal justice system, the judges are very limited in what they can do. It's basically
They can
jail.
do what the law says they can do.
That's right.
Basically, they have to obey the law.
That's right.
We'll come back and talk more about restorative justice.